We are talking about special right triangles, and in this case, we're talking about 45, 45, 90-degree triangles. And we want to use the properties of 45, 45, 90 triangles to solve problems. So a 45 degree, 45 degree, 45 degree. We are talking about special right triangles, and we're talking about 45 degree, 45 degree, 90 degree triangles. And we want to use properties of 45 degree, 45 degree, 90 degree triangles to solve problems. So we refer to these as 45, 45, 90 triangles. And this is a right triangle where the hypotenuse is the square root of 2 longer than either leg. Now, some things that we need to remember, because each one of these base angles is 45 degrees, that means that these angles are going to be congruent. So because base angles are congruent, then that means that our legs are also congruent. So L and L are congruent. So that's the 45, 45 part. Then we have the 90 part. The 90 part says that this angle between the legs is 90 degrees. So that brings us to our hypotenuse. And our hypotenuse is always the side that is opposite the 90-degree angle. So with that being said, we can have an example here, and this is just a made-up example. Again, because it's 45, 45, these angles are congruent. So that's an isosceles triangle. So that means that these two sides are congruent. So we're just going to make up two side lengths. And so in this case, our leg, represented by L, is going to be equal to 3. And that's going to be the same thing on this side. Now, this is a 45, 45, 90-degree triangle. So that means that this is our hypotenuse over here, opposite the 90-degree angle. And now there's a special relationship that's written right here where the hypotenuse is equal to the length of the leg multiplied by the square root of 2. So that's the equation that we have. And that's going to be the hypotenuse is equal to whatever the leg is multiplied by the square root of 2. So we're trying to find out what the hypotenuse is. So we figure out the leg is equal to 3. So we're trying to figure out what the hypotenuse is. And the leg is equal to 3 times the square root of 2. So this is the hypotenuse right there. We don't have to do any further simplification than that, because we cannot distribute a 3 into the square root of 2. Those are two different things. So we have to just leave it that as our answer. So we want to figure out, as we go down through these examples, we want to figure out what the missing side lengths are. So for example 1, this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So we should know that each side is congruent because it's an isosceles triangle. So that means that x has to be equal to 7. Now, the equation that we have for 45, 45, 90 triangle is h is equal to L times the square root of 2. Now, our leg, they're both 7, so our hypotenuse, or in this case, our hypotenuse is our y value, because right there is our 90-degree angle. So substitute in our values. Our hypotenuse is y. Our leg is 7. And the square root of 2 is just that, the square root of 2. And then our x value, we've already decided x value is 7. So here are our two solutions. X is equal to 7. Y is equal to 7 times the square root of 2. Now we can look at example 2. And again, we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So in this case, our x value is also going to be 3 times the square root of 2. And then we're going to use our special relationship where h is equal to L times the square root of 2. And we're going to substitute in the values that we know. So we know that our y value is actually our h because it's opposite the 90 degree. So we're going to say y is equal to our length, or our leg is 3 times the square root of 2. And then we're going to multiply that by the square root of 2. So when we multiply this together, we're only going to multiply together the things that are under the radical. So we're going to left with y equals 3, and then 2 times 2, we've got the square root of 4. Square root of 4 is, so y is equal to 3, the square root of 4 is 2. So then we get y is equal to 6. And then we already knew that x was equal to 3 times the square root of 2. Now we're looking at example 3. In this case, they gave us x and y, but the good news was this is 45 degrees and this is 45 degrees. So we know that x and y are congruent, and x and y can otherwise be known as they're both the legs, right? So we can go back to our previous relationship that we knew, where h is equal to the legs, or one of the legs, times the square root of 2. Now, because these two are 45, that means that this one has to be 90. So 12 is our hypotenuse. So we can plug in 12 there, substitute it in, and then we get L times the square root of 2. Now we want to get L by itself, and it's L multiplied by the square root of 2. So what we can do is we can divide both sides of the equation by the square root of 2. So we get 12 over the square root of 2. is equal to L. We do not like having a square root in the denominator, so we want to get rid of that. And so I'm going to rewrite this as 12 over the square root of 2. And one way to get rid of that is to multiply by a value that is equivalent to 1, which is going to, in this case, is going to be specifically the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Now, the reason we did that is because if we plug this in our calculator, square root of 2 divided by square root of 2, that is just equal to 1. But by multiplying by this specific 1, that is going to allow us to simplify our denominator. So we get 12 times the square root of 2 is 12 square root of 2. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. But we know what the square root of 4 is. The square root of 4 is 2. So that's going to be 12 times the square root of 2 over 2. Now we know that 12 and 2 are both divisible by 2. So then our final answer in simplified form is 6 square root of 2. Next we have 45, 45, 90 triangle. And this is the same idea where we have our hypotenuse is equal to the leg times the square root of 2. And because these are both 45 degrees, that means that they are congruent. So if they are congruent, that means that x and y is congruent. And these are equal to the legs, because this is a 90-degree angle. So our hypotenuse is always opposite the 90-degree angle. So we can substitute our values in that we know. So we know 13 square root of 2 is h. And we do not know what L is. And then the square root of 2. And this one's going to be a little bit more straightforward. How do we have multiplication here on the right side, and the way to get rid of that is to divide, and we want to get rid of the square root of 2. So those cancel, and we're going to divide by the square root of 2. And then the nice thing about this is we have the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2, so that cancels out. And now we know that 13 is equal to the leg. Or we can say x is equal to y, which is also equal to 13.